Hey, what is going on, everyone? It's me, Mr. Mario, and welcome back to another episode of Mario's Minute. For those who do not know, Mario's Minute is my podcast I do, and it's actually my second podcast. My main podcast, Mod Chat, is where I talk about things that I find new, interesting, cool, maybe do a little bit of show and tell in the world of video game modding and video game console modding as a whole. It is a little bit more edited, organized, and such here, and there is more of a visual component to it, unlike Mario's Minute, in which this is my second podcast where I come on here and I talk to you all about really wherever the hell I want to. Sometimes I have a guest on, sometimes I don't, and we're just going to be doing another solo episode here. I know I said last episode, I'm just like, we're just going to have guests on when we have guests on. I've tried to do it every other month, but this is on me. I've been kind of, dropping the ball on that, and really, I mean, excuse or not here, it still falls on me, but I will say it's kind of just having to organize a lot around like the holiday season, then balancing the YouTube thing, and then kind of just... sometimes it's just a lot easier for me to just sit down and just record for like 45 minutes or an hour real quick and then get this out as opposed to, kind of trying to organize with someone. But that's, sometimes how that happens. So I will get a guest on here at one point. I just don't know exactly when, but we'll see how it goes. Either way, this here is my podcast where just kind of like a little bit of what happened there. I come on here and I talk to you all about really whatever the hell I want to. It's not really scripted. I kind of come in here with a little bit of an outline. Like I said, sometimes I have a guest on, sometimes I don't, but there are a couple places you can consume this podcast. One of them is the Mr. Mario 2011 YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey channels, and another one is on your favorite podcast app, host, provider, or platform. I know it's not available on all of them, but it is available on most of them at least. If you look up Mario's Minute, you can actually download this and take it around and listen to it wherever the hell you want to, like an actual podcast. So with all that being said here, let's go ahead and get into these topics here. I only have a few things I really wanted to discuss and talk about, but they were some fun things here at least. I do want to give a little bit of a shout right here and say a happy, I guess at the time this is dropping, a happy belated birthday to the Xbox 360. For anybody who does not know, I'm not going to focus on this one too much here because by the time this comes out, I actually will have about like I no joke, you all, I end up recording like over 2-hour video about this. I still need to get editing that while I'm recording this right now, but yeah, it's probably going to be just over 2 hours, and that was more of like a podcast-ish type video, so just because of that, I'm not really going to be talking too much on here, just because, well, this would probably end up being 3 hours if I included that segment in here. But either way, it's surreal to think that the system is 20 years old and we're still seeing some of the most exciting developments on it that we have seen on almost any system. I didn't even really touch upon this in that video, but I will say that it's really funny to see as well too, and really impressive that out of that generation of consoles, you could say that the Xbox 360 was the most secure in a way. Because it took so long for the hypervisor to fall. There was a hypervisor exploit early on in the system's life cycle, but it was on such an early dashboard. It's like 4532, I want to say. It was on such an early dashboard that like hardly anyone can really practically use it or have access to it. So up until then, really to disable the hypervisor, you would have to go in and solder in a glitch chip or solder in a couple wires for RGH3. And there was a way of doing that, but in terms of just being able to do what we do now, very similar to the Wii or the PS3, where you can just really, like on the PS3, you can load up your web browser, go to a site, and as long as you have, your firmware and stuff installed properly, just a few files on a USB drive, you can modify your system. Same with the Wii, you can take a few files, you can put it on the SD card and just do a few things, and then boom, you have a modded system. You couldn't do that on the Xbox 360 until this year. And even now, I would say, out of all those systems, that entire generation, I'm even including the DS, and I guess you could even say the DSi and the PSP in there as well, too, if you want to include those ones. The Xbox 360, I would argue, is now the easiest system to mod, because you don't even need to install anything. It's quite literally, it's at the point now, as long as you're running the latest system firmware, at the time of recording this at least, which is 17559, you don't even need to install anything directly to the system. It is literally copying, pasting files to a USB drive, and then you do a few things to run the exploit, and then you're in a modified state. It is not permanent when you do bad update or bad avatar, but just having that go from, like I said, probably the hardest system to modify down to the easiest system of that generation to modify is incredible to me. I know some people will argue and say the Wii is easier to modify, but it's even like, yeah, don't get me wrong, they're both quite easy, but like when it comes to 360, it's literally just copy paste files to a USB drive, and that's it. You don't even need to do an install. Like there's even less work than you have to do on that, so it's impressive to see, at least. I think it's just surreal that not only we're still getting those developments, but there's more and more interest in the system now. It still works relatively well with modern setups, thanks to HDMI, thanks to the wireless controllers, thanks to it even having internet capabilities on it as well too. And Xbox Live for 360 is still enabled to this day. Is it great? No, but it is still live and working, which is really cool to see. So I think the last part on that too is also just with everything, it seems like all over the place, all over the world, getting more and more expensive, you can thankfully get working Xbox 360 for pretty affordable prices, because at this point now it's like, I know the games have been going up in price because that's kind of just what happens when a system is about 20 years old. If you go to a game shop, you're probably going to have to overpay for a 360, depending on which one you go to. However, if you just don't go to a game shop, if you look on eBay, you look on Vinted, Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, if you look at any of those places, you can get perfectly working Xbox 360s, like later models and all that too, for incredibly low prices. So it's a really awesome low barrier to entry if you are wanting a system that can still run, games that can scale pretty well, even compared to modern day games. I play on my PS5, I play on my Switch 2, and I play on my Xbox 360, and I have no issues kind of switching between the both, all three of them, outside of, just having to rearrange, where the buttons are on the controller in my head. But aside from that, it's like even my girlfriend, I mentioned this in the video, she'll like look at some games I'm playing on the 360, and she's like, dude, this still looks really good. Like she'll be impressed at like how well it handles the system, like how well those games handle on the system and such. So definitely something that we were annoyed by when the generation was relevant, but as it's aged, it's like, actually, this is fine. This is actually pretty impressive here. And you don't need, like I said, even with the HDMI thing on there, well, the port, you don't need any extra adapters or anything, like, hooking up a PS2 or an original Xbox or something. Like, it still works pretty dang well, even on completely modern setups. So that's another accessibility point that I love to see on there. But happy birthday, Xbox 360. Have had a lot of good experiences, a lot of memories. Have met a lot of really awesome people along the way as well too. I could talk a lot more about it. I'd love to talk a lot more about it, I'm gonna be honest with you all, but I'm not gonna do that because I just did a whole lot of that in the last video I released. So if you kind of want an Xbox 360 just overload of sorts, check out the 20th birthday video I did on it. Hopefully it's okay. I'm hoping so, at least. Speaking of game consoles, though, one thing I did want to note down, because I saw this on YouTube, where there was one day in particular, but even if you exclude that day, there was about a week or so, there was a lot of people I noticed who made videos about this, which it wasn't about any of these other systems. It was actually about, well, I guess it was about one of these systems. It was about the PlayStation 4, is what I'm saying. And this is something, I guess, I haven't played as much on the PS4, I guess in recent times, because really I have the PS5. And then, modding on older systems has been more interesting to me, in my opinion at least, compared to the PS4. But when I went back to revisit the PS4, I was surprised with how much more streamlined a lot of the processes were. And I'm mentioning all of this because what I'm trying to say is a lot of the, like, during that time, there was a few days on YouTube where just a lot of people made videos. I know some shout outs here. Epos Vox, he made a video about this. MVG made a video about this. They made videos on the same day. I don't even think they were interconnected. I don't think they contacted each other about it or anything, but it was just a funny coincidence they made them the same day there. And sometimes that happens. Real quick, shout out to another friend on here, Blaine Locklear. There was one time we ended up the same day. We did not have any correspondence about it, and the same day we ended up making the same type of video. We both made videos covering Movian on the PlayStation 3. And again, we had we weren't trying to synchronize our schedules. We didn't even mention it to each other. And he even left a comment. He's just like, dude, wow, like great minds think alike. We had the same thing come up. So that was a funny moment. It happens sometimes. I know sometimes there's people that think like, creators will collude like that. Sometimes it does happen, but other times like, no, it's just the brainwaves are the same in the air, I guess. But it was funny because a lot of these videos were very similar to each other, in which they were stating that now is the time to get a PlayStation 4. And I kind of wanted to revisit, I want to talk about that. I want to visit that a little bit here. Because the PlayStation 4 originally came out, I know we don't really want to think about it, but it originally came out in 2013. I vividly remember, the whole era of like even, up to getting my PlayStation 4 and, kind of, just the fight against the Xbox One and all that as well too. And it really felt like that was like the people's system and the player's system right there, like that was the one. If you wanted to stick it to Microsoft, you get a PS4. That's how it felt right there. However, when it came to the PS4, it came out in 2013, so it is a 12-year-old system. Since we were talking about, like modern systems working well with modern setups, like with the 360, the PS4 does an even better job because it just has better technology on it and such, and it scales better. And of course, if you get something like a PS4 Pro, you're even able to get 4K output. So you do have those better abilities right there. However, a lot of people are saying that the PS4, it is a great time to get one now because for a few reasons. One of them is that modern gaming is so expensive, and this is what I have talked about on this podcast several times, and it's something that's disappointing. Not only we're seeing price increases on systems new and old, we're seeing them on the Xbox Series multiple times over. We've seen it on the PlayStation 5. The Switch 2 has not increased in price yet, at least. I hope it doesn't, because it's already expensive. But the original Switch, if you buy one brand new, ended up increasing in price. That's just I've never seen that move before. I've never seen that before, but that ended up happening there. And then on top of that, games are going up in price as well too. The standard now is what, $70 for games? I'll be honest, I really don't be paying $70 for games. I've talked about it on this podcast before where I said, yeah, if you factor in the how much, development time it takes and inflation, all that stuff, technically we should have increased the price of games earlier. And this is technically going to be cheaper in a way. And while I understand that here's the thing, logically that makes sense, but just my gamer goopy brain right there and kind of like the caveman brain I have, when I look at a game and I see it selling for $69.99, I'm just like, if it was $60, I'd probably pull the trigger, but $70, I think I'll wait for a sale. I don't need it right now. I can wait like a month or two, especially because for a long time now, games have been dropping in price really quickly. I think one of the few games recently I ended up, which y'all know I love this game, one of the few games I ended up picking up for full price was actually Expedition 33, where I went out of my way and I bought a physical copy of it because I did want to support it. I did want to support it physically as well too. I wanted it physically in my collection. And plus, for the full price, it wasn't on sale. It was a full price $50. That's the MSRP. I'm like, you know what? This is fine. I'm okay paying $50 for this. I'll gladly pay for that. And that's what a lot of people are seeing in the game industry as well, too, just real quick on the game prices, is that it seems like the best-selling games right now are not the ones that are selling at a full price of $70. They're the ones that are selling at $50, $40, $25, $20, because some of the biggest games we've seen this year have been Expedition 33. I know I actually need to play this one. I know it's not a full price, like it's not a $70 game, but Dispatch, I know that's a huge one. I do need to play that. I actually have it on my Steam Deck. I have it installed. I need to actually play it though. And then Silksong as well too, Hollow Knight Silksong. I think that's like a $20, $25 game, something like that. So it's... Yeah, that's happening. Even real quick, I think even like the latest $70 game I have, is Mario Kart World. And even then, I technically didn't pay full price for it because I end up getting the Switch 2 bundle. So if you end up doing the math there, I end up paying $50 you can say for that as opposed to $70, which is what a lot of people are doing. They're kind of just looking for those discounted games as well too. It's gnarly enough right now where I know like we're getting into the holiday season, Black Friday, all of that stuff. And Nintendo is actually doing substantial discounts on first party games, like as in for the Switch, not really the Switch 2 because there's not really anything on there, but like the original Switch games. And you know, the meme is Nintendo games never go on sale. Like first party Nintendo games do not go on sale, but they're going to be selling some first party Nintendo games like physically as well too for like $30, which that ended up shocking me. I'm going to be honest with you all. But what I'm saying here is I spent the last few minutes talking about this, just talking about the prices of games, and like games are expensive, and even if you do something like Game Pass is going up in price as well too. Even if the top tier just jumped from $20 to $30, people I know who are Game Pass loyalists, they got annoyed with that. I actually mentioned this on the Xbox video, but one of my best friends, I ended up giving him a RGH for his birthday. He absolutely loves the thing, and he only has 2 systems. He has the RGH now, and before that, he ended up having the Xbox Series X, which he was playing most of his games on Game Pass. And he's still enjoying games on there, but even he's been annoyed with them. He described it as price gouging. That's the term that he used for it. I don't think it's accurate, but that's how he feels about it, at least. And he's going back to the RGH and he's like, dude, this thing is awesome. I love this thing. And that's what a lot of people are doing. They're going back to these older systems. And the PS4 is now old enough that it is considered an old system. It is a system that people are nostalgic for. And even when we're talking about the pricing, you can get a PS4 for an incredibly affordable price. Again, like if you're not, I don't even know if you can buy them new. If you're buying them new, I mean, it's got to be old stock at this point, like dead stock is what I mean. But if you're finding a PS4, it's really easy to find them because so many of them have been sold, and since so many of them have been sold, they are pretty affordable as well too. The PS5 has been out for 5 years now at this point. I know we don't want to think about it, but the PS5 is no longer a new system. It's been out for 5 years. So that's even why it's even more annoying that the price has not gone down on it, but I'm not going to get into the reasons for that. PS4, at least, if you get one used, you can go again onto Vinted, onto Facebook Marketplace, onto eBay, onto Craigslist, and I see people regularly buying PS4 consoles, like the original models, and sometimes even the slim models. I see people buying them for $50, $60, sometimes with games included as well too. For under $100 for sure, you can get yourself a regular PS4 or a PS4 Slim. It might not have a controller with it, it might not have a cable or something, but those are easy enough to get. And then even the PS4 Pro, you can get them for under $150, I would say. You're going to have to pay a little bit more if you go to a game shop or something, usually, like if you go to GameStop or somewhere else. But what I'm saying is you can get them for really affordable prices. The only thing is, which is actually one thing that is exciting with them as well too, you can also modify them. You can jailbreak them. You've been able to jailbreak them for a very long time now. Now you do have to be on an outdated firmware to jailbreak your PS4 if you've never done that. Unlike any of these other systems, the PS3, the 360, the Wii, the DS, the DSi, the PSP, all those systems, the firmware doesn't matter. You can get any of those systems right now. You can update, at least at this time I'm recording. And I say that because maybe the 360 will release an update at one point. I'm sure there will be, but point being is, at least right now while I'm recording this, you can get any of those systems, update them to the latest firmware, and you can just modify them right off the rip. No issues there. You cannot do that with the PlayStation 4. You will have to be on a lower firmware. However, the thing is, because the PS5 has been out for so many years, and because backwards compatibility for PS4 games on the PS5 is so good, a lot of people who still have their PS4s but also have a PS5, a lot of people just stopped using their PS4, or they ended up disconnecting it and they put it in a closet, or they put it in storage, or maybe they still have it hooked up, but they just haven't used it in a long time. Because a lot of people, they might move an old system to their bedroom or something just to have like a Netflix type system, or like a YouTube type system, you know what I mean? But then people might move on to another device. So I know there's many, many, many people there who, like, people listening to this, I'm sure, who probably have a PS4 in their household that they just haven't used for a while, and they're just now realizing listening to this that it could be jailbreakable. And that's just, yeah, if you have a lower firmware. Even a lot of times, if you go to a game shop and you get a PS4, depending on when they ended up taking it in, and depending on what their process is for, wiping the system and getting it ready for sale and such, it might be on a low firmware as well too. So what I'm saying is, finding a jailbroken PS4 is pretty dang easy to do now. And it is incredibly simple to jailbreak a PS4 as well, because there's many different options that you can take, but the latest one right now that works on the highest firmware is BDJB. Really, that just involves burning a Blu-ray disc. There's a few there's like an ISO file essentially that you need to burn to a Blu-ray disc, and that's the actual jailbreak program itself. So you need to get that, and then you need a USB drive in order to transfer a payload to the system. And once you do that, that's it. You don't even need to keep updating the payload unless you want to, but you just need that disk drive, and that's it. And there's other options as well too. If you're on like lower firmwares, you don't even need to do that. But what I'm saying is BDJB, it's incredibly simple, and you don't even need to burn the disk yourself. Yeah, I've seen people, what they do, like if they know someone who has a burner, that person can burn a disk for them. There's people who are buying pre-burned disks as well too. There's even been people, if they don't want to do either of those options, one idea I've seen that people have been doing is they've been like contacting businesses or contacting companies or websites or services where you end up paying them to like make a disc for you. And I think there's one, Kuneki, I want to say. There's like one service, it starts with a K, and you can do that. Essentially, if you want like CDs, DVDs, Blu-rays pressed or made for you for like a really affordable price, you just send them the files, you send them the art and all that stuff, and they slap it up for you. So you can go with services like that where you literally just send them the ISO file, you pay them the money, and they create the disc for you and send it to you. So you can avoid buying a burner. So there's several ways where you can do that. Point being on there, though, is that even still talking with the cost savings and stuff, the PS4 has a ton of games for it. A really robust, really vast, really awesome library, both digital and physical. And digitally, I mean, you would have to, if you want to access the marketplace, you would have to get onto the latest firmware, and you'd have to, get on the PlayStation Store and such. But even with that, you can still use PS4 online just fine. You can access games on there just fine. You can purchase, you can download games. You can get PS Plus, and you can synchronize your saves. You can play online as well too. You can do crossplay with people on PS4, people on PS5. You're able to do all of that. And while as the PS4 is still getting new games for it, albeit not as often, still just with that alone, it is still getting new games on it. For example, the example people keep bringing up is a Hollow Knight Silksong that end up releasing this year on the system. So it is still perfectly usable. It is still a perfectly viable system, whether you want to revisit some games, whether you want to play some games for the first time, or even just like check out some stuff that you might have missed on there. There were a lot of really good remakes and remasters that end up releasing on the PS4. And these are remakes and remasters of like PS1, PS2, even PS3 games as well. So there's a lot that you can access on there. Plus, the nice thing is if you jump into a system, or if you jump back into it, maybe you had a PS4 and you sold it and you get back into it now, you can pick up so many, not just good, you can pick up excellent games. Excellent, best-selling, like awarded, like, hand over fist awarded, just like amazing games for incredibly low prices. Because the funny thing is, when a system is no longer relevant to that extent, all these games that end up selling millions of copies, they're not still going to be, $50, $60 games. Because there's millions out there. You can get amazing games. You can get excellent games for $3, $5, maybe $8 a piece. So even collecting for the system is incredibly affordable to do if you want to build up that physical collection. There's a lot of good stuff you can do on there. Like, for example, hey, look, I love the 360, right? But like some of the best games on there, the Halo games, the Gears of War games, you can find those at any time, anywhere for incredibly low prices. Not because the games are bad, but because they are incredibly common, because pretty much everybody in the heyday of the 360 had Gears of War and Halo at one point. Maybe they didn't have all of them, but they certainly had them. So it's been nice to see that there. So there is more of a resurgence for the PS4. There is a lot more love for the PS4, and I would certainly agree with everyone who's saying that now the time is now. It's a great time to jump into getting a PS4, especially when not only it's so accessible, you get all the games there, you can jailbreak it pretty easily, but especially just with the cost of gaming, how it is now. Even PS5, people are kind of struggling to find exclusives that really push them to get a PS5. There's a few on there. With Xbox Series, everybody, they're just saying everything is an Xbox now. You know, your computer is an Xbox, your PlayStation is an Xbox, soon enough your Switch 2 is going to be an Xbox. And then the Switch 2, I love the thing, but here's the thing, I love the Switch ecosystem, right? And the Switch 2 is a fantastic way to play Switch games. I'll say that. But there's only, 3 exclusives on the Switch 2 right now. I know there's more, but out of like the big games, you have Mario Kart World, which that's debatable. That I wouldn't even say that's a system seller. It did sell systems, but like, is it worth getting just for that? In my opinion, no. Donkey Kong, great game. And then we just got Kirby Air Riders as well too. Which, by the way, that was funny to me because I distinctly, I'm gonna go on a tangent about Kirby. Let me talk about that after I'm finished with the PS4. Okay. I think I'm wrapping up on here now, but yeah, there's a lot of good stuff to have with the PS4. I think the only other thing I would recommend is if you're going to be looking for a PS4, I'd recommend if you have the extra cash to splash, get yourself a PS4 Pro. Yes, it is going to be a chunkier system. Yes, it is going to be uglier, but for not that much of a price difference here, you're going to get better hardware on there. The second recommendation I would make is when you get your PS4, just right off the rip, upgrade it to an SSD, especially if you have a PS4 Pro. It is going to help out. I believe the PS4 Pro has a SATA 3 interface, although it doesn't really fully utilize the SATA 3 bus because it's something where like it uses the same bus speed as like USB or something like that, like USB 3. So you won't get that full extent of SATA 3 on there, but it will certainly be an improvement. And SSDs are pretty affordable. Now, they've been affordable for a hot minute. So that's what I'd recommend. If you're looking for a PS4, if you're in the market for one, if you're interested in jailbreaking one, try and get one on low firmware. But if you're getting the hardware, get yourself a PS4 Pro, get yourself a SSD, upgrade that thing to an SSD. Get yourself a 1 or 2 terabyte SSD. Even if you're going to be playing games off if you're going to play them off an external drive, still get yourself an SSD. That was one thing I did before I ended up getting, because for a while I couldn't get the new systems like the Xbox Series and the PS5. It just wasn't possible to get them. To kind of get me over that hurdle, I ended up upgrading my PS4 that I was using at the time. I upgraded it to an SSD in there, and man, that thing really flew. It was a really nice upgrade on there. So yeah, there was that. Definitely a good time to get yourself a PS4 now. So we're good. In terms of the actual, like the Switch I was talking about, I did want to talk about this real quick with Air Riders, and I'm just typing this down so I remember to actually note this, but it's not that I just got to say real quick, it's not that I think Kirby Air Riders is a bad game. I saw one of the best descriptions of it on Twitter because people kept sharing videos and gameplay and such of it, and they said that every time they see gameplay of Kirby Air Riders, it always looks like something that Glep from Smiling Friends would have on his tablet in the background of the show. Because it's chaotic, it's fast. But here's the thing, I really never played Air Riders. I played a little bit of like the global test, and even then, I didn't actually play it online. I was really just doing the practice because I wanted to see how it was. But this has always kind of perplexed me a bit, because I didn't realize there was so much love for this game, right? Here's the thing. It's a first-party Nintendo game, but it was a game that was originally supposed to come out on the N64, and it was canceled. That's how I found out about it. I found out about it from several videos I watched where back in the day where they were talking about this game that got canceled on N64, because it was uncommon for Nintendo to have a first-party game like that, especially with a first-party mascot, and even show it off to the public and demo it and then cancel it. That was such an oddity. So I knew about that after it was canceled, but then that's why it was even crazier to me that it ended up releasing on GameCube. And then I distinctly remember when the game came out, it reviewed mid. it was not reviewed excellently. Like, no, 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 no. It was reviewing like mid, like 5s, 6s out of 10s. Like, for a first-party Nintendo game, it did not review well, which was even more shocking to me. Then to add even more shock to that, I was surprised that it became a player's choice game, meaning that it sold well enough that Nintendo ended up putting that, yellow player's choice badge on there. Or not badge, but they put like the flyer, or they ended up making it a player's choice game, and they were selling it at a discounted price, kind of like greatest hits or platinum hits on PlayStation and Xbox respectively. So that surprised me even more. But what shocked me the most was the resurgence of it coming back, and even years before this. I remember this. I remember when I was working at a game shop in high school. I've talked about this many times, not this part here, but I remember when I was working at a game shop, there were people who were always looking for Air Riders. And there was one person in particular, I remember he bought Air Riders, and I think like later on, like, or he had it and like the disc got scratched and he was trying to fix it, and we just could not fix the disc. And this dude was so disappointed that it couldn't be fixed up. One of my best friends as well too. I remember he was just like, "Oh man, Air Riders was awesome. I love it." And I was just surprised with that. But it seems like every single person I've ever talked to who has played Air Riders has loved the game. So that is one of those games where it's like, it does not review well, but if you talk to people, like if you have those 2 review scores, right, you'll see like the professional reviews are like 6s, maybe 6s, 7s, something like that. But when you talk to actual people, they'll be like, no, this game is amazing. This game is excellent. Like they'll think it's like the best thing ever. So there's some magic right there. But having it come back, having like Sakurai go after this game and actually work on it and bring it to fruition with Air Riders, I was surprised at that. I love that it kind of ended up taking over like my corner of the internet, and I'm just happy to see that people are enjoying this so much. But I'm also just happy to see that like even it did end up coming out, and now it reviewed better than the first one. I'm noticing it's getting maybe like 7s and 8s out of 10, so it's still not like reviewing like top tier, especially for a Nintendo game, right? But when it comes to Kirby Air Rider and Kirby Air Riders, the sequel here, I think people just love it because it's fun. That's it. It's fun. It's chaotic. People just have fun with it. That's it. And I love that because that's what gaming should be. It should be fun. Now, speaking of a little fun thing, I did want to share this here. This was something I talked about in a Mod Chat episode, but I ended up giving one of my friends a present. Now, I thought about this for a bit, and she's been one of my friends for several years. But she is not a gamer. We've hung out, we've played games together, all that stuff, but she herself, she's not a gamer. So it surprised me when at one point she was telling me, like, we were out one day, we were out at a flea market, this a few years ago, and I saw a PSP game, and she told me that she had a PSP growing up, and I was surprised. And then she said, yeah, no, I had one, and I guess, because this is what a lot of people did, right? A lot of people who, like, grew up around, like, the same time I did, there were people who had, iPods were obviously king there, but there were a lot of people who had PSPs, and there were a ton of people who had PSPs that you wouldn't expect, because the PSP was cheaper, at least, on the surface, it was cheaper than the iPod, plus it could do all the same stuff the iPod did, but even more, because it was a game system that also happened to play movies, and happened to play music, and also happened to get on the internet, and also allowed you to save photos and even take photos and share photos and do all that stuff there. So in many ways, actually in a whole lot of ways, it was able to do a lot more than an iPod. But here's the thing, an iPod is an iPod. And I'll just be honest, if you're looking for a music playing device, the iPod is going to do the better job than the PSP. It did so back in the day, it's going to do so better current day. That's just the truth of it right there. However, I was in that camp as well too, where I believed the PSP was superior because you could do everything an iPod can do and more. In reality, I could just, the PSP was cheaper than the iPod, and I couldn't really convince my parents to get me the iPod there, especially when I kept having these cheap MP3 players that kept dying on me. But point being on there was that, yes, like a lot of people were in that camp. She ended up telling me, though, that, yeah, she had a PSP, she loved it. She was actually even known as the PSP girl because she would be playing her PSP like every morning, like on the bus ride to school and such. And then eventually she had to get rid of it. She said it was probably like pawned off for, like bills and all that stuff, which was sad, of course. So what ended up happening was I had this idea where I wanted to get her set up with another one. So I have like a few PSPs in my collection, but I had a blue PSP 3000. It was like the best condition one I had that didn't really need any extra work on it. Of course, I ended up putting Arc 4 custom firmware on there. I paired it with a Samsung Evo micro SD card and such too. Did some customizations to her liking on that as well. Was able to just, like theme it out and such. And then it was great because this was for her birthday. So on her birthday, we got food. She didn't even know I was going to be paying for her meal, so I ended up doing that. But this is just the stuff that I love to do, right? And this is why I love gaming. I love modding. I love being able to, create moments like this. I'll tell you this, I end up, at the end, I said, hey, I got you something, and I end up pulling out this. It wasn't even, I ended up finding it downstairs, but it wasn't even a PSP case. It was actually a PS Vita case, but it ended up like fitting the PSP and accessories and stuff pretty well. So I ended up giving this to her. She was just shocked that I got her anything, but then she ended up opening it up, and you could just see it's like she was shocked seeing it, but then you could see kind of like the lag time of her brain realizing and making the connection that this was her PSP and that this is now something that she can keep. And when the dots end up connecting, she just started crying. And it was happy tears, of course, but she was really happy, and she's just like, dude, like, I don't know what it was. I even had, like, a dream about, like, being back on the bus and playing the PSP recently. Honestly, though, that was probably a little bit of my doing, because I didn't necessarily hint it to her, but I was asking her some PSP-related questions, so you know how it goes, the subconsciousness and all that. Or maybe you don't, because, well, it's subconscious right there. It's not your actual conscious mind, making all those thoughts. Point being on there, though, was she was happy about it, and she even mentioned, she's like, dude, like I've been wanting something like this, and like I've been like so stressed out, and it's like it's nice to actually have something like this, and I don't have to just like scroll on my phone, and I can have this here, and like it's mine, and I don't have to pawn it off now. So it was a nice little tear jerker right there. But that's why, and I shed a few tears as well too in the middle of that. So this is part of why right there, just with examples like that, this is part of why I love to do what I do. Because I tell people, I'm like, look, I'm not like the most talented person, and there's a lot of stuff I could do better with, but this is something I know decently well and I enjoy. And if I can use my talents with, like odd game system stuff, or like helping out fixing computers or whatever it is to make someone happy, that usually makes me pretty happy. So that's always some cool stuff. I do want to start kind of winding down this episode a little bit here. So last time we had one of these episodes, I did not hit you all with a game store story, so I'm sorry. I'm going to be bringing up one of these, though. But there were a couple that I thought of recently, and maybe I'll share one of them. We'll see what happens. But one of them was related to the band Tool. I've mentioned them a few times here on the channel. For anyone who doesn't know, Tool is my all-time favorite band, like ever. They've been my favorite band since I was like 12, actually. So it's been a while, but I remember at the time, this was before I ended up seeing them live. I was originally working at the store when I was 16. When I was 17, I went to go to my first concert, which was Tool, which was amazing. But at that age, this is before I ended up seeing them live. And just working at a retail shop, you end up running into some characters. And you don't even run into them because you're just sitting there, or you're just standing. You're just standing behind the counter and they come to you. That's what happens, right? And you kind of just have to be nice about it and, just work with it, because that's part of the job, just working with the public there. This guy, I had never seen him after this, right? But it was funny because there's this one dude, he just like a little bit of a wild looking dude. He comes in kind of like dirty looking and such. It's not like he was homeless or something, but he just didn't really take like the most care of himself. But we ended up having a really good conversation about Tool, and I don't even remember how we got onto the topic, but he's there and he's like getting really excited about it. He's like, oh man, oh dude, like they're amazing, like they're this amazing band. I'm like, no, dude, I know they're great, they're awesome. We're just like geeking out about it. And he's there. He's like, yeah, no, man, I ended up, I ended up even seeing them as well too. And it was incredible. And it was like, it was the most incredible thing. I'm like, dude, I know I've seen the bootleg concerts. I really want to go. I've seen the videos. I listened to them. He's like, no, man, no, it's different. You got to go. You actually got to go like see them. And it was like one of the best experiences ever. Like it was amazing seeing them live. And he just keeps talking up. But the thing I remember with this was he ended up taking like a few steps back from the counter, right? And he's being very expressive with his hands and all that stuff. And he's just like, man, the crazy thing was, and he's just telling me how amazing it was. I was like, okay, well, like I asked for some details about the show, and he's like, oh, I can't remember, man. I can't even tell you. I was drunk. And I just started laughing, and he's like, no, man, like it was like, but it was, all I can remember is that it was incredible and it was amazing. And I remember seeing them drunk, and I'm like, man, if they are this amazing drunk, like I gotta see them sober. I gotta do that if they're this good when I'm drunk. And like, before I die, I gotta see Tool like, I gotta see them like 5 more times before I die. And he was very passionate about it. I love to see that passion. That was great. But yeah, no, that those would be some of the examples there that had come up of just like odd people that came through. I just remembered this here. I just remembered this one, and I believe I told this one before, so this is going to be a little bit of a redux of a story here. Not the original story I thought of, but like just kind of on the topic of, funny people like this, right? One of the other examples, I didn't even run into this guy, and I talked about this a bit before, and if I'm reduxing this again, if you've heard this one, I'm sorry, but, this is also for people who just, they haven't really, heard this before. At one point, there were a few times we would have job applications available. And there was one time, not really the best thing, right? But, it was so long ago, it did happen. And, this is kind of just what happens at times. We had a stack of job applications. We ran through those things really fast. And then at one point, we were at one of the stores, and it was myself, my manager, and another coworker there. And my manager just pulled out the job applications. He was like, hey, let's look and see who's here. So that's why it's like, not really the best thing. It shouldn't have gone through that. But, local store was like almost 20 years ago or so. So this is just the stuff that happens. Point being, though, we're going through the job applications. At least like he's showing us. And he's like, oh, yeah, this person wasn't great. This person was, oh, I remember this person. And I guess there was this one dude who he ended up coming in, and he was just not really presenting the best side of himself, right? Like he was just really not great overall. He was just really kind of abrasive and such. And then he wanted to know if we were hiring. And my manager said, yeah, we have job applications. So he said, I'm going to fill it out right here. So he ended up filling it out right there right in front, right? He didn't even take it home or anything. He had to ask for a pen, and just like the handwriting was not great. Like the job application, you could just see his history was not great on there. But I guess the thing that I do remember, and even my manager, this is how he remembered him. My manager, you got to realize he had like tattoos all over him, right? He wasn't like as, wow, people have a lot more tattoos now. I was about to say he wasn't like looking like a SoundCloud rapper, but like he had one sleeve on one of his arms. He had another arm that had several tattoos on it. He had some tattoos on his legs and stuff as well too. But the thing that really stuck out was like his arm sleeve. One of his sleeves, one of his arms, he had like some blue flames on it. That were inspired by Chester from Linkin Park. Rest in peace. But what happened was the guy ends up insulting my manager's tattoos. He pointed them out, and he said something like, oh man, like those look like shit. Like he's just like talking shit on his tattoos, right? And he's like, look, I did all this myself. Then he backs up like a few steps from the counter, and he lifts up his shirt. And I don't even remember what it was, but like my manager just said, the dude had ended up, he was so proud, he like tattooed himself on his chest. And like my manager couldn't even read it. Like it was like all like crooked and squiggly and all that stuff, but my manager just handled it professionally. And he's like, oh, well, yeah, no, that's good. So those would be some of the things that come in there. Maybe one last thing on the job application side as well too. I don't think I ever shared this one. One time I was talking with my boss about it there, and he was so annoyed at some of these job applications because several of them were just not great. And I remember the one thing he said, he was like, no, man, I'm handing out these job applications. I don't even want to do it anymore because it's like people aren't doing it properly. Like I had one job application, I gave it to someone and they brought it back and it was written in pencil. And I'm just like, why is it like you wrote it in pencil? You couldn't even write it in pen? Like, do you not have a pen? Like, dude, you didn't even, what is the excuse for this? You took it home and you filled it out and you brought it back. You left the store with it and you brought it back and you couldn't even write your job application in pen? You wrote it in pencil? So, just little things like that. I feel like that the job application side of things is a little bit lost now, just because obviously everything is online. Even McDonald's, Burger King, and those places, you have to apply online. You can't even if you want to go into a physical store and get a job application, you can't do that. And even then, by the time I was starting to get like into my professional career and stuff, job applications have never really gone away, but it's been obviously a lot more on a resume. It's much better to pass out a resume as opposed to, doing the job application, but now just, you do it all online. So even that's kind of a little bit of a lost art there, but I think something that a lot of us are happy enough to graduate from. Now, the last thing I want to talk about here is what games I'm currently playing. So I ended up finishing up, which game was it? I ended up dusting off the PSP recently because, messing around with that PSP kind of got me bitten with the PSP bug. So I started updating my systems. I was messing around with some homebrew. I was putting some games back on them as well, too. And there's one game that I've had in my collection for years, and I've never played it until now. And I don't really know what caused me to play it, but I did. Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law. That's the one I played. Now, this ended up coming out on the PS2 and the PSP, and from what I know, they were both like pretty equal ports. I looked into this a bit, and from what I saw, they were really the same. The difference was obviously PS2 is on a console, PSP is on a handheld, and then the resolution is better on the PS2 version compared to the PSP. But I was playing on a PSP Go, so playing on a small screen like that, especially like a small and pretty nice screen as well too, it ended up looking like a nice HD image. It looked good on there. So I ended up playing that, and it was, dude, this game was hilarious. I really liked Harvey Birdman growing up. Now, I was much more of an Aqua Teen person when we're talking about, the Adult Swim shows. So if anyone's going to start like throwing Harvey Birdman references or quotes at me, I'm sorry, I won't be able to play with you on that. I don't know it to that level. But I know the rough characters enough at least. And I will say this game was funny. I took it very slow. I was playing through it. I really enjoyed it. My only complaints about it were that I wish the save system was a little better there. Like, for example, if you finish up, there's 5 cases in the whole game, and if you finish up one case, and each case kind of plays like an episode, but if you finish up one case and then you go to another one, typically the logic would be when you finish up a case, it should save your progress, right? But it doesn't do that. The save points are within the episodes themselves, and they're at random times. So when you're playing through a case, maybe like 10, 15 minutes into that case, you'll get a save point. And then 3 minutes later, you get another save point. And then 5 minutes later, you get another save point. But when you finish it, like when you finish a case, it doesn't save your progress. You have to go to the next case, and you have to play until you can save again, which had me backtrack several times because there'd be times I would finish up a case and I would turn off my PSP, or I would exit the game for whatever reason. Then when I got back to it, even though I finished that case the night before, it wasn't showing up there. The other thing as well, too, which I did see this issue, and I did end up experiencing it, was for some reason during the second case or second episode, the subtitles got really messed up. They just got super out of sync for whatever reason. But that was really the only other technical issue I ran into. It doesn't try to hide itself at all. It is a Phoenix, like it's an Ace Attorney, like Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. It is an Ace Attorney clone. It is also developed by Capcom as well too, which I believe they're the ones who did the Phoenix Wright games. So it ends up working in that term. The visuals were great. It looks like you're playing through a Harvey Birdman episode, and this game is also really easy to 100% as well too. So if you 100% it, there's like some extra bonus cutscenes you can get. There's also like some extra just things that you extra unlockables you can get as well too. But the Easter eggs, like the bonus Easter egg cutscenes, were so funny. And I mentioned Capcom because they ended up just dropping in Street Fighter references for these bonus cutscenes. So one of my best friends I just hung out with recently, like he's a huge Street Fighter nerd, so I was thinking of him whenever I saw this there. But it was great because I'd even been, telling some people in my Discord server about this when I was playing it. I said that I was starting to play it like every night before bed. So I'd play it, and then it had this really nice side effect because I'd be playing this game, and as I was playing it, like, I'm, laughing. I'm in a good mood right before bed, right? I'd find a good stopping point. I go to sleep. I'd still be thinking about it. There was 1 or 2 nights I was dreaming about this game. So to say I got into it was definitely an understatement. But Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, definitely recommend playing that game. It's on PS2. It's on PSP. Pick your poison on how you're going to play it there. Outside of that, I'm still doing my Ring Fit adventure, Monday through Friday. I need to go back and actually finish House of the Dead 2. Girlfriend and I need to actually finish and play that game. And then aside from that, I'm dabbling a little bit in, like, if I'm on the Switch too, I'm playing a little bit with, which game was it? Donkey Kong. So yeah, Donkey Kong Bonanza. But the one I've been focused a little more on has still been Astral Chain. Yeah, I'm still playing that. It takes me time to get through games on there, but that has been really great, especially on the Switch too. And then I think like the last game I've been really playing has been Mario Party Jamboree. One of my best friends and I, during our game nights, we've been playing that, which, by the way, kind of a dumb thing on there as well too. So this game has, like, it has achievements, right? Which I think is dumb because they're achievements per game. They're not on the system. I just think it's kind of annoying. I say this as someone who is a reformed achievement whore. If they're on your profile, it makes sense. But if they're just in game, I just think that's silly. I don't think that's needed, especially for something like this. Now, I've been playing Jamboree since it came out, right? And I did not know there were multiple other boards you could unlock. When you first start the game, there's 4 boards that you have access to. But then if you progress through it, there's 3 more boards that you can unlock. Now, I thought it was dependent on wins, depending on how many points you get, depending on how much time you put into the game. And even one of my best friends is a game developer, and he was looking into this. He's like, this is dumb. Like, especially for how much time you've put into it, they should have given you the boards to unlock right there. But it's not. This game has 50 achievements, and if you get all 50 of them, you end up getting the credits on there, so that's technically how you beat the game. But you end up unlocking the new boards at 10 achievements, 20 achievements, and 30 achievements unlocked. It does not matter. You can sit there and play the game for 100 hours. But if you only have like 8 achievements, which you're probably going to have more at that point, but if you only have 8 achievements during that time, you're not going to have all of the boards unlocked, which is really disappointing. So one of my friends actually gave me a tip on there, because originally I was just going to, like, get like a completed save and put it on, because I'm like, dude, I played this game so much, I just want the boards. But he said, actually, what you could do is you could just go crazy with the mini games. So that's what I did, and that's a tip to anyone else. Like, there's mini games that you can play on there, and there's a lot of achievements for them, and it's pretty easy to rack those up. You can do it pretty quickly. So if you just sit down and just try to knock out a bunch of mini game achievements, you can unlock the boards within 1 or 2 hours, I would say, pretty easily. I think that's dumb because, again, I'm someone who I've put a lot more hours into the game just organically playing it, and not being able to unlock those through, a few hours of playtime or something was annoying. I mean, we're talking about the same company different developers, mind you, but the same company where, for example, like Super Smash Bros. Melee, Mewtwo, I remember to unlock him, you had to play the game for X amount of hours. I don't remember how many, but I distinctly remember when I learned about that, I was with some friends, and one of them said, yeah, dude, I just ended up getting a GameCube and I got Melee, so I actually have it running at the house right now. It's on right now because I'm trying to unlock Mewtwo. And I was really confused by it. And don't quote me on this, but let's say it's like 100 hours. And I believe he said something like, yeah, no, you have to unlock Mewtwo, but the only way to unlock him is you have to get 100 hours in game. So I'm just running the GameCube for several days right now until I unlock Mewtwo. So that's certainly a way to do it. But if you're going to do achievements right. That's my opinion on it, okay? It should be a bonus. It shouldn't be a need to do something to unlock a functionality in a game or unlock an extra board or something like that, especially on something like Mario Party. My own opinion, my own annoyance, though. Anyways, that is about it for this episode of Mario's Minute. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. Hopefully it was entertaining. And, I will say to anybody who's going to be celebrating Thanksgiving here, hopefully you all have a good time with some family, with some good food, with just some good times overall. Now, typically, I like to pick a keyword or a key phrase, and if you use this keyword or key phrase in a comment on the video upload, I'll know you made it to the end of this episode. Typically, I look at something on my desk, so you know what, I see this here, which I completely forgot about for a while, even though it's funny it's on my desk. Let's go with plushie. Do you have a plushie collection? Did you like to sleep with plushies when you were younger? Do you have a plushie next to your bed? Do you have a really rare or valuable plushie? Maybe you have some really rare Beanie Baby that is like the one or two Beanie Babies. I think there's more of them, but like maybe it's one or the two of the Beanie Babies that are like still worth a lot of money as opposed to just being worthless on there. Were you a part of that Beanie Baby plushie craze? Let me know. Which, oh, by the way, I will say this. Seems like a bit of an obvious thing. I didn't know there were actual little like beans, and they're not like beans you could eat, but like little like beans inside of Beanie Babies until I saw one ripped open. The way I even saw that happen was like recently, my girlfriend's dog. So a family member from my girlfriend's side ended up giving her dog several plushies. One of them ended up being a Beanie Baby. Now her dog ended up loving this Beanie Baby, right? But at one point, like after a few days, I just noticed the Beanie Baby got like ripped open, and I just heard all these things come out. And it was these like light, like tiny white little beans, which, we did our best to vacuum up and clean up because they were absolutely small, tiny choking hazards. But it took me so many decades after the Beanie Baby craze was over to realize what was actually inside one of these things. And it's little beans in there. Definitely clean them up though as well too. Like I said, it can definitely be a choking hazard. But yeah, again, plushie. Just maybe talk about your favorite plushie that you had growing up, or maybe one you still have, or whatever it is. If you want to go to IKEA and get one of those shark plushies, so be it. Anyways, that is about it for this episode here. This is Mr. Mario signing off. Thank you all for listening and watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, or episode, I guess video here. But if you enjoyed this episode, a like would absolutely be appreciated. If you didn't like it, a dislike is fine as well too. But as I always say, this is Mr. Mario signing off. Thank you all for listening and watching, everyone. And until next time, or next month. Yeah, next month.